Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to present our webinar with exclusive tips around Giving Tuesday campaigns for nonprofit and higher ed fundraising professionals. My name is Janelle Coates and I'll be your moderator this morning. I'm in the marketing department here at LexisNexis. As you can see, LexisNexis is an industry leader providing information professionals with access to premium news, business, and legal content. More than 90% of Fortune 500 companies rely on LexisNexis to guide them toward informed, fact-based decisions and strategies. Today I'm joined by one of the most sought-after digital marketing experts for nonprofits and charities, John Hayden. He's helped hundreds of nonprofits realize their best marketing. John helps nonprofits, charities, and community foundations get more from their digital investments with strategic coaching, consulting, and training. He's also the author of Facebook Marketing for Dummies and Facebook Marketing All-in-One. From a numbers standpoint, he's helped Komen Greater NYC increase their online fundraising by 30%. He's helped the Ellie Fund win a national online fundraising contest, which raised $53,000 in 24 hours. And he's also helped Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity raise over $21,500 during a Give-LNDP event. You can find more detailed information about John on his LinkedIn page, and be sure to follow him on Twitter. For the format of today's webinar, John will present key insights about Giving Tuesday campaigns and how you can capitalize your efforts accordingly. We'll also hear from LexisNexis representative Ginger Cole, who will briefly present how we can help Giving Tuesday campaigns from an email perspective. We'll then open it up to a Q&A session before closing. Please submit your questions to the host and presenter through the chat box on the right-hand panel of your screen. And with that, I will hand it over to John to get us started.
Great. Thank you so much, Janelle. So welcome everybody to this webinar on Giving Tuesday, basically proven tips to make your Giving Tuesday campaign stand out. But the strategies and tips that you're going to learn here will actually apply throughout the year, and especially going towards the end of the year as well, right? So this is not just a one-off campaign that we're talking about, although, you know, that's the focus. This is going to really help you throughout the year. So next slide. So Janelle mentioned that they're going to talk a little bit about LexisNexis and email towards the end of the session today. And I just want to share some really interesting statistics about email. So email is actually, just to kind of cut to the chase here, there's a lot of data on the screen, but basically email is the most effective channel at raising money, all right? So it's not necessarily social media, it's not these other channels. Of course, I'm not really talking about direct mail, that's a different kind of animal. I'm talking about online, which includes email. And according to M&R Benchmark study, they do a study of about 160 nonprofits every single year, and they've actually tracked them over the past few years. So they have a lot of really interesting data over several years. But they find that 30% of all the online revenue that they get, you know, from donations, can be tracked directly to email. So that's huge, right? That's a big part of what they're doing. Now, why is that important? The reason why that's important is because email is very low investment. So basically, for every dollar invested, the return is about $44, right? And for every 1,000 nonprofits emails delivered, which costs about $1 for most email marketing tools, again, $4. So it's really an effective channel to use. And the reason why is because when people join your email list or when they're on your email list, they're essentially giving you permission to communicate with them. They're very different from someone who's simply following you on Twitter or Instagram or on Facebook. It's really they've given you permission to enter their inbox, so they're really inviting this sort of communication. And that's precisely why it's a little bit more effective than most other digital channels. Next slide. And so M&R also broke this down by different channels, different sectors within the nonprofit world. So environmental, we can see raises tons of money from email, and other sectors like health, not so much, but you know, you can kind of compare and look at what your organization is dealing with in terms of the cause and compare with the data that they have. Next slide. And so one critical piece of email, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on in the webinar, is to basically set up a welcome series for donors, right? So that's what you want to do, is you want to create this really good first impression when someone makes a donation. If you just kind of ignore them or only send a receipt and that's it, it's not a good first impression. And we can see here that of the organizations that are studied, most of them, about half, are actually sending 3 messages in a welcome series. So for example, it could be the first message might say, thank you so much for your donation. You just made a big difference in someone's life. Share this campaign with a friend. Another email that they receive might come, say, a couple weeks later and say, and give donors an update on their impact. And then finally, maybe a month later or up to 90 days later, there's another email, a third one, saying, hey, why don't you consider making another gift or becoming a monthly donor, right? Now, the research, according to Blackbaud, they're a big fundraising company, they found that if you ask a donor to give again within the first 30 to 90 days, you increase the likelihood that they will give by 50%. So basically, you're increasing the lifetime value of the donor simply by setting up a welcome series, which is kind of really cool because all you have to do is you set it up, you set it and forget it, and you're good to go. Next slide. And then this really breaks down, what type of messages are being sent during the year for subscribers. So if we look at, for example, environmental, we see that most of the communications they have are really fundraising emails, but they're also supplementing that with advocacy. There's some advocacy emails. Advocacy is sign this petition, make this pledge, take some sort of action that isn't really tied to a donation. And then, of course, we have newsletters and then other emails. The other emails might be triggered emails, like those welcome emails and emails that are sent in response to, say, a pledge or maybe sending a receipt for a donation. Next slide. So the first step really towards Giving Tuesday and really end of year, because they are very closely related. I mean, really, Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. It's also the Tuesday after Black Friday. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the history of Giving Tuesday, it's been around for about maybe 4, or maybe this is the 4th year, I think. And really, it is in response to, in my mind, it's kind of in response to Black Friday, right? Black Friday. Let's all spend money on ourselves, and it's all about us. And so the nonprofit community, starting with actually the YMCA 92K Street Y in New York, they came up with this idea. Well, people want to give. They really want to think about others. They want to be generous, especially after Thanksgiving. So that's really where Giving Tuesday started, and now it's kind of a global movement. It's really centered around giving back, thinking of others, being generous, having gratitude. Next slide. So your plan, and next slide, your plan really starts with understanding your people, right? So what are we talking about with understanding your people? The first step is to understand who they are. Now, when you reach out to people to support your Giving Tuesday campaign or really any campaign, you want to focus on a few different segments or a few different groups of people that are ideal. The first is people who gave last year, right, to the same campaign. So let's say you did Giving Tuesday last year, and you can reach back out to them and say, hey, guess what, we're doing this again. We'd love to have you participate, and you'd have a special message for them, right? So they're very different. When I say a special message, I mean you're going to craft a different email for each group of people. People who gave last year, first-time donors, maybe people are on your email list, maybe they're getting your email newsletter or they signed a petition, but they have yet to give a gift. They have yet to make a donation. So obviously that message for those folks is really going to be a little bit different, encouraging them to give. Repeat donors, that's a different message. So when I say repeat donors, I mean people who have given more than once or they are a monthly donor. And then, of course, we can break this down to small, mid, and major donors. These are different groups. So you really have to think about the different groups of people that you have in your database and think about what is the best way to approach them and how can we craft a message that's going to encourage them to give. If you treat everyone the same, your results aren't going to be that great, okay, because then people aren't going to feel so special and the message isn't going to be personalized for them. Next slide. Now, you also want to understand, like, where do you get this data, okay, and how do you begin to understand your people. First of all, you want to start with your database, right? So look into your database and find out what, what are the most likely people to donate to this campaign. What's their behavior in the past? What programs are really effective? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand not just the data, but really the heart of the donor, what motivates them, what sort of events they attend, what programs they're interested in supporting. So that's one place you can start with. And then also, there's a tool that Facebook has called Audience Insights. And this is where you can actually upload an email list into Facebook, and you can really look at things like household income, household makeup, like are they families, are they single, are they, what's their purchase behavior, are they, do they make tons of money, or are they more working class, or, what's their income level, and also what's their purchase behavior, are they likely to be charitable, are they in the market for a car, for example. And you can even get into information about how digital they are. Are they mostly accessing Facebook from a mobile device or from their desktop? And of course, you can also look at demographic information, gender, location, and age as well. The other thing you want to do is, and this is again, some of this is longer term for you, collecting survey data. So a lot of nonprofits I work with, we actually, in the process of, onboarding donors and doing better donor communication, I should say, we actually implement a lot of surveys. And surveys are very quick, 1 or 2 questions, but they're asked at the critical time. For example, when someone makes a donation for the very first time, you can have a quick survey, just simply an open box, a text box that they see, and it asks them, what made you decide to support this cause today? What was it? You could ask multiple choice, which is great because then you'll get more participation in the survey. So you could say, someone is personally impacted by this cause. I heard about it on the news. I am personally impacted by this cause. My family is, and so forth. And so that's one survey you can do. And then also, when someone gives a second time, you definitely want to know what made them return, right? When someone gives you the first donation, it's pretty amazing. When the person gives you a second donation, they come back again. You could say, almost, this is amazing. It's a miracle, almost. And then also, if someone decides to become a monthly donor, if they give you that commitment to have money taken out of their bank account every single month, you want to understand what makes them tick. So underneath all of this data that you're gathering is you really want to understand the heart of the donor, what's motivating them. Because what you're going to do is you're going to craft your stories and your messaging to speak to those specific desires. For example, I worked with a literacy organization, and they had a very simple survey. They had they wanted to understand what angle are people interested in. When it comes to literacy, and they asked a survey, they said, are you interested in helping adults learn how to read, families learn how to read, or children learn how to read? What's your interest? What's the angle of your interest? And of course, from that information, and each donor is answering this question, now that follow-up communication is going to emphasize the particular angle that they chose, right? The follow-up emails, if they picked, I'm interested in families. Families around the area, they're really struggling with literacy, and here's what else you can do. So that the angle and the pitch is a little bit different based on that survey response. Next slide, please. All right, so this was kind of getting at what I was just discussing was, which campaigns drove the most donations, which programs matter most to donations. And again, the emphasis is to really find out their reasons, not yours. Don't make any assumptions about your donors. You really want to understand what motivates them. Next slide, sorry. Now, the next step in this process is to develop your story. And a lot of organizations I work with, they kind of struggle with this idea. So storytelling is actually pretty core to fundraising. But unfortunately, a lot of fundraisers and a lot of nonprofit marketers, they're kind of accidental marketers or accidental fundraisers. In other words, they had a prior, work experience, and now they find themselves in the role of a fundraiser or a marketer. I work with a lot of nonprofit marketers who have a fundraising background, for example. And so often, this idea of storytelling is fairly new to people, to organizations. But the bottom line is that storytelling is the most effective way to do fundraising. And we all do this. Storytelling is something that's very hardwired into us as a species. And this is the most effective way to really engage donors. Now, to kind of break it down and make it very simple and accessible and doable, I prescribe a framework of, and it's not my framework, by the way. It's basically a classic story arc. And it's built on the hook, hold, payoff framework, okay? So the hook in your story ultimately is a person or a family or an individual, really, that's impacted by your cause. So, for example, an animal shelter, I've worked with a few different animal shelters. They talk about a person. Now you might say, well, John, we're talking about dogs and cats, right? No, we're talking about people who are changed because they adopt a dog and they're happy. And they're really talking about that relationship. So that's the hook. The hook is that emotional aspect of the story that's just going to get people emotionally. That's the critical part of it. The hold part of the story is to present plot questions or a problem that needs to be solved. All right. So a family, I work with Habitat for Humanity, as Janelle mentioned earlier, and if they had their fundraising message saying, hey, we make houses for people who can't afford houses, that's, okay, great. First of all, it's not a person, right? So they lead with a family. Here's a family. And then they take different slices of that family. The father just wants his son to have a safe place to live so that he can grow up and be successful one day and be a father himself, so that this dad can be a grandfather. So there's that sort of introduction of the character. That's really the hook. Now the hold is everything was fine with this family, and they were so happy until the father lost his job. And then everything fell out from underneath them. Now they're just starting to pull themselves together, right? So that really presents the plot questions. It's a problem that needs solving. That's what the hold part is. You're introducing the character. That's the hook. That's that emotional, like, you got my attention. You got my heart. Now you present the problem. What needs to be solved, Now the payoff is really the conclusion of the story. Now, just to kind of demonstrate how hardwired hook, hold, payoff is, we've all heard once upon a time, right? That's the beginning of like every story. Once upon a time, this is the story. Every single one ends, happily ever after. There's some kind of resolution, right? So there's introduction of character, conflict, and then resolution. Now, in terms of the payoff, from a fundraising perspective, the payoff is a call to action. Now, the call to action shouldn't be something like donate or give us money so that we can help this family out. No. The call to action is change this family's life. Provide a safe home for this family's future. Give this father support. Support this family with a house from Habitat for Humanity. So really, the payoff is really actually kind of making the donor the the protagonist or the hero, the one who's actually going to solve the problem. I'm going to give clean water. I'm going to feed a hungry family. I'm going to end this injustice, right? That's the sort of language you want to use in a call to action. Next slide, please. So here's an example, actually, from American Rivers. This is an environmental organization in the Northwest, and they had this really successful campaign around a little boy named Parker. And Parker, in this video, and you can look this up on AmericanRivers.org, he is sharing his 50 favorite things about Northwest Rivers. And he's a kid. He's the cutest kid. The great thing about that, and that's the hook, actually. So basically, he's so cute, really grab your heartstrings, and he's instantly relatable by everyone. Everyone on the planet has a child or was a child. So instant relatability right there, right? And then, of course, what are the obstacles? The hold is, will these rivers exist for future generations? You know, this is Parker's favorite places. Will they exist for other kids or other people like Parker? That's really the underlying theme here. And then the payoff in this example is, what's on your list? What's your favorite thing about Northwest Rivers? So they're not necessarily asking for people to donate, but certainly there's a call to action in this in the story. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, now, so when you want to, basically what separates the successful organizations from the organizations that constantly aren't really meeting their goals is one thing, in my experience. And I've worked with hundreds of organizations, and it's really the ones that have a written plan are the ones that actually are much more successful. So write down your plan. And what you can do is, I recommend, keep it really simple. Identify audience segments, different groups of audiences in your database that you're going to target for your Giving Tuesday campaign or your year-end campaign. Be really specific about that. And, map out a little bit of information about what really motivates them, what makes them tick. You also want to make note of internal owners, people who are really going to, have a stake in the success of this campaign. We could have volunteers, certainly, but just make sure you're documenting who is going to do what, as well as partners and sponsors. And also the last one is super important when it comes to Giving Tuesday or a year-end campaign, and that is a major donor. I think this is such an underutilized strategy. It's amazing how many nonprofits don't do this, and it's so simple in a way. It's not easy to execute, but it's definitely a simple idea, and it's this. You find that major donor that's been giving you money year after year, and you demonstrate how smart you are to this major donor by having the following conversation. Hi, major donor. We know that you're going to give us $10,000 this year. I mean, obviously, you're going to say it differently than I am, but, we know you're going to give us this money, and thank you so much for your past support. However, we're going to make your $10,000 go twice as far, okay? We're actually going to turn that $10,000 into $20,000. The major donor says, really? Wow, you're so smart. I'm so glad I support this organization. How are you going to do this? And of course, the way that you do that is you provide this as an incentive to provide a sense of urgency to your online donors. So in other words, in this email campaign, the email messages, and perhaps on social media, the message is, and you're not leading with this message. The message that you're leading it with is, protect the rivers in the Northwest this year. This is really what we're going for this year, and you can be a part of it. Now, you can do this at any other time during the year, for sure, but you want to do it now, and we have 3 days left. You have to do it by Friday at 5 p.m. or whatever it is, and if you do, your donation will be doubled, dollar for dollar, period. So then the online donors feel, wow, my money is going to go twice as far, but only until this date. You have to have a deadline to that communication. And this really creates a tremendous sense of urgency throughout the campaign to meet the goal. This specifically is really useful when it comes to Giving Tuesday because we're dealing with a 24-hour campaign. Next slide, please. So just some more information about writing it down. Have SMART goals. We all know what SMART goals are. They're specific, measurable, attainable, and so forth, right? But just write that down. I always like to say, shoot low if you are doing this for the first time. So if you have a written plan and you're really getting specific about goals, don't shoot for the pie-in-the-sky goal. Shoot for the one that is realistic and even lower that goal a little bit. That way, your focus is on the process, and you can celebrate your success, and you've had your experience of creating a plan and executing it. That's so important. Next slide, please. And then the last part, one of the last parts in the plan is actually the strategies. So you have to really be clear. What do you want them to do? What do you want the donor to do? Of course, you want them to donate. But you also might want them to share with their friends. That's another action. So be really clear about the actions that you want donors to take. And I always recommend, every time someone makes a donation, you should immediately ask them, thank you so much, share this with your friends. And also ask them, you have to be clear about when you want them to do it. So have a timeline of your asks, your campaign, and your goals or milestones that you have during your campaign. And the part about what's in it for your donor, that really is embedded in the story. So what's in it for your donor is the satisfaction of making an impact that they care about. That's ultimately what is in it for the donor. And the reason why donors support your organization isn't to give you money. That's not their primary motivation. It's to change the world in a way that they believe in. And that's what we really always have to come back to. So we have to reinforce that. For example, in the follow-up communication or welcoming a new donor, we always want to remind them of the impact that they made. You never want to say, thank you for supporting us. We're such a great nonprofit because we do all this great stuff. That's removing the donor from the narrative. Instead, you want to say, thank you for thank you for feeding hungry children. Thank you for giving clean water to this community in Africa. Okay? And then the last step here is you really have to, think about how are you going to stand apart from the competition. I worked with a breast cancer organization actually a couple of years ago, and they did a fundraising competition. And I said to them, well, what's going to be the message? What's the message here? And they really didn't. They said, wow, we're going to have a chance to win some money. And I was actually pretty honest with them. I said, you know what? You're just starting out. Chances are you're not going to win the money. I don't mean to discourage you, but we should never lead with something that's highly unlikely. The donors won't really go for that. Okay? So they said, well, there's the pink ribbon and the October Breast Cancer Awareness Month and all that. And I said, nah, everybody else is kind of doing that. So this is really, if you do that, you're going to be invisible. The pink ribbon will make you invisible. How are we going to do it different? And then we started talking about the children in the families where the mother has breast cancer and she's struggling to recover, but then the kids are impacted by that. And they have to take on maybe extra chores or maybe deal with their fears and be much more helpful around the family. And so that's really what we focused on. And that angle that we took instantly differentiated them from all the other breast cancer organizations that were talking about the patients. We said, let's talk about the kids. This is very unique. And that is one of the reasons why they won that competition. Amazingly, they won that competition. Next slide, please. And then in terms of your timeline, you want to map out a timeline of your communication. So a soft launch to core supporters. When I say soft launch, I mean basically you're introducing your core supporters, the people that you can definitely depend upon, to have them go in and make that first gift. That way you can see, how are they responding? Is there anything we need to improve? And of course get feedback from them too. And then you have a big, hard date where you're going to launch the campaign to your community, to overall community. And then during your campaign, you want to also map out promotions and offers. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier a match. You know, we have an anonymous donor, and she's come forward. She's going to give $10,000. She's going to match your donation dollar for dollar, but only up until this date. You have to do it now. And, of course, you can have a couple of different matches during your campaign. That is more so for a longer-term campaign. So Giving Tuesday is pretty short, right? It's just a one-day campaign. So in terms of promotions and offers, this gives you an excuse to have, okay, here's the noontime promotion, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. You can have different promotions or different matches or different offers throughout the day. And then any sort of event dates as well. That wouldn't necessarily apply with Giving Tuesday. And then the drop dead date or the deadline is really the last chance. And in terms of year-end fundraising, I always recommend to my clients that they send at least 3 emails on December 30th and December 31st. On the 30th, they can of course send a fundraising email, you know, please consider making a gift before the end of the year. And then on the 31st in the morning, they send an email that thanks everyone in their community. Thank you so much for all your support in 2016. You know, if you want to make a donation, that's great. But really the primary emphasis on this message is thank you. And then the last message, of course, is you send it on New Year's Eve, maybe 5 p.m. or 4 p.m., you know, before people go out and say, this is the last chance. You have until midnight to make a donation. And you want to emphasize the impact that they're going to make before the end of the year. And the secondary message is really, oh, by the way, this is also the last chance for you to write this off in your taxes, right? So don't lead with the tax benefit. That's not really going to be the motivator. What's going to be the real motivator is I get to do something really great, something I believe in, before I go out and party and get drunk on New Year's Eve. Next slide, please. So to kind of help you put this together a little bit, and you can look at this later on the slide, basically I have a workbook that helps you put together a social media marketing plan. There's a little bit of an email element in there, but you can look at this a little bit later on. Next slide, please. Now, we're going to talk about taking action on your plan. So in terms of taking action on your plan, you need to create content. So you're going to work on creating images and video. And I have a couple of tools I'm going to mention, so you might want to jot this down with a pencil or pen. In terms of images, we all have an iPhone. Actually, in terms of images and video, we all have smartphones, Androids, iPhones, and so forth. So today, it's so easy to take pictures and capture pictures. So we want to start thinking about curating pictures and stories in both images and video. And of course, you know, again, smartphones can now take very high quality video. So there isn't such a need. I mean, obviously you can hire a videographer, but supplement that with other video that you have on your iPhone. So it really depends upon your overall strategy. You might hire a professional. That's great if you can. And then you also want to craft out headlines and subject lines. So headlines would be for your landing page, you know, your donation page. Subject lines, of course, for your email messages. And you want to have different variations for each instance. Like you want to try, if you can, you want to try doing split testing with your donation page. So you want to have different headlines on maybe 2 or 3 different donation pages, and you could do some A/B testing with that early on in the campaign with your core supporters, you know, that soft launch. That's the purpose of the soft launch, is to try and work out the kinks in some ways. And in terms of the subject line for emails, again, you want to have 3 different versions of a subject line for each fundraising email. And the reason why is because now we can do some split testing on these emails and basically test them out on a small % of subscribers before we send that message out to everyone else. Okay? And of course, we have to develop our landing page or our donation page. We have to work out the direct mail aspect of a campaign, our email copy. Of course, the copy is going to have a story or that hook, hold, payoff in it. And then we have to develop social media posts. So often the social media posts will be actually derived from the creation of the landing page, images, videos, and everything else that we're assembling for the campaign. Next slide, please. And now your landing page or your donation page. And I say landing page, by the way, because I have a lot of clients that are doing a Giving Tuesday campaign, but they're not, the emphasis is on an action that isn't necessarily donating. For example, I'm working with a diabetes organization, and they have a campaign for Giving Tuesday where their community, they're going to be able to create a thank you card to someone who's really been supportive in their journey dealing with diabetes, right? So that's the emphasis in their campaign. But for either just a plain old landing page for your campaign without a donation, or for your donation page, you want to make sure, first of all, that it's mobile. Now, the good news is that most donation platforms at this point are mobile. You can easily check this out yourself by looking at it on your smartphone. You want to make sure that you can easily see the headline. It's really clear. Any videos, images are able to be displayed pretty easily. And you don't have to pinch or squeeze or zoom in. And also about mobile, you want to make sure that the form is really easy to fill out on a mobile device. So you definitely want to test this out, your donation page, on your mobile device before you launch the campaign to everyone else. Also, tell the story. Make sure there's this emotional aspect to the story. On a landing page, I always recommend having a nice image right at the top that's going to tell the story emotionally, okay? So, for example, that child sitting there wondering if he's going to have, a good future, and in the background you can see there's like a homeless kind of situation going on. Make it urgent as well. So you want to tell people to take action now, change your life now. Don't wait. Don't miss out. So when you use words like that, don't wait, don't miss out, this is the last chance, we have a matching donor, now's the time. This is fine to use this sort of language. Some people, especially people who don't have a marketing background, sometimes they feel like, we don't want to be too pushy. But if you use the format that I recommended earlier, the hook, hold, and the payoff, you can certainly, it's much easier to say, give clean water today. This family really needs good clean water. This community needs your help. That's much easier to emphasize and be really urgent about instead of, give us money. We need money. You never want to say, we need money. That's not a good message to put out there. And then obviously make it meaningful. So when someone gives, they are giving because it's meaningful to them. And don't forget the thank you page. On the thank you page, right after they donate, they should see, a couple of things. First of all, thank you. Second, you just made an impact. To connect the donor to the impact. The third part of the thank you page is share this campaign with your friends. And then including the Facebook, Twitter, and other sharing buttons. Next page, please. And then the last step here in terms of taking action on the plan is to actually track conversions. So long term, you want to be able to answer your boss's question. Your boss's question is going to be, well, which strategy is really working? All these emails that you're sending out, are they working? What about the Facebook ads? Are they working? And a simple way to do this, well, I shouldn't say a simple way, but a common way to track conversions is through Google Analytics, right? But one thing that I found is a lot of nonprofits haven't set up the basic feature in Google Analytics, which is a goal, right? So a goal in Google Analytics helps you track specifically when a goal is achieved, and when a goal or a conversion is achieved, like a new donor, a new volunteer, a new subscriber. And once you have that set up in Google Analytics, you can dive down and look at where are these people coming from? What campaigns are driving the conversions? And of course, what are the interests and demographics of the people that are becoming donors? And the last thing I'll say here is that because of time, we can't really get into how to set this up, but they actually have a really great channel on YouTube, Google Analytics, obviously by Google, and it will show you all the getting started videos that you need to set up goals and to set up Google Analytics. Next slide, please. And then the last part, of course, with taking action is to build your team, right? So on your action plan, you want to have, a short list of core donors that are going to give you feedback about the story, the pitch, the landing page, and other elements. Volunteers, of course, to help you out with your campaign. Staff, who are the people that are on the payroll that are going to be responsible, and what parts are they responsible for? And if you have any consultants, you want to obviously have them in your plan as well. Next slide, please. So one thing that a lot of organizations do, and I've seen this happen time and time again, especially with Giving Tuesday and year-end, is that the campaign is over and then there's crickets. Basically, nothing happens. There's no communication. So we really have to think about, okay, someone gave us a gift for the first time. We want to have them, have a good first impression. But not only that, we want to tell them what's next. They are going to want to know what's next. So when they give money, when they support you on Giving Tuesday, if you just leave them hanging without any follow-up, they're going to forget about you, honestly. But if you immediately follow up and say, hey, here's what you can do, here's what's next, then that's going to be really key. Another recommendation that I offer for organizations is to start creating a donor circle. A donor circle is simply a hand-picked small group of core dedicated donors that you can meet with every quarter, right? Every 3 or 4 months. You meet with them, you give them coffee, donuts, whatever it is, and you simply ask them questions about your communication, about your organization, how you can improve. Basically, they are the super elite VIP insiders that you're learning from. So creating that donor. And it's amazing the kind of dialogue you can create in a donor circle, people talking face-to-face about stories and how to communicate and, how to more effectively make an impact, and asking these donors, how can we do it better? How can we, what makes us stand out compared to other organizations that you're supporting? And how can we do it better? Really, that's one of the core questions. And the other piece of keeping the momentum going, and this is more longer term, this is kind of a culture shift for a lot of organizations, is to unify development and communications. Sometimes in medium-sized or large organizations, these are two completely separate departments that often have conflicts. Development, of course, they always want to slap a donation button everywhere on the internet. We've got to get people to donate. We've got to ask them to donate. This is important. We've got to post this on Facebook now because we're not reaching our fundraising goal. And, of course, the communications department is thinking to themselves, that's not really how social media works. It's more about creating value and engaging people. It's a longer-term approach, and there are more effective ways to ask. So unifying them, communications can certainly learn from development about a donor's true motivations and the donor's heart. Development can learn from communications about the effective ways of actually accumulating potential donors and building that list of potential leads for development. So next slide, please. So the last thing I'll say, if you want to keep in touch with me, it's fairly straightforward. There's a URL here, and I have an email list of about 21,000 subscribers. I send out a newsletter every single week. And you just go to johnhayden.com/join. And I also do a Facebook Live mini training every Wednesday. I call it the Hump Day Coffee Break. And it's a specific topic every week. Maybe it's 15, 20 minutes on Facebook, and that's it. But you can find out about that through the newsletter. And that is it. So let's open it up for questions.
Before actually we do that, I just want to thank you, John, so much for sharing your fundraising expertise and Giving Tuesday tips with us. And before we move into the Q&A session, just briefly for a few minutes, I'd like to introduce Ginger Cole, who is a client manager and product specialist for LexisNexis for Development Professionals. She's been with LexisNexis for 27 years and has some fantastic insights on how our fundraising solution can help you. So, Ginger, I will hand it over to you for the next few minutes.
Okay, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Janelle. Thank you. LexisNexis does have a product that can assist with one of the very specific things that John talked about, and that was email address. We have a product called LexisNexis for Development Professionals, wherein you are able to search by a name, or if you have an email address and you don't know the name, you can search by email address. If you go to the next slide, please. It's available here. As you can see, I have some arrows directing you to email, and then go ahead to the next slide. You can put in somebody's name, or you can put in the email address, and retrieve back information on an email address information on an individual. We also provide you the ability to create email lists based on a company name, and if you go to the next slide, we have something called Executive Dossier, where you can create an executive list. For this example, I used the company name Harley Davidson, and then if you go to the next slide, I give you an overview of, I put in the name Harley Davidson, and here's a list of all the Harley Davidson executives, and it does provide their title, email address, and telephone number. And again, that's just two of the very small things that the LexisNexis for Development Professional product can do to assist with email address location. And that's it. Back to the Q&A with John.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ginger, for sharing that with us. So now we'll go ahead and move into the Q&A session. We have a few minutes left. And just as a reminder, please submit your questions via the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. And so the first question that we have is for you, John, and that is, what would you say is the single most important tip to make your Giving Tuesday campaign unique?
Oh, wow, unique. Okay, the single most important tip. First of all, right now, what you should do is you should subscribe to your competition. So basically other organizations out there that are similar to your cause that you consider, competition. Definitely subscribe to their emails, follow them on Facebook, do some research and find out what are they doing, what's their message. And what you want to do is you want to create some contrast. So in the example I shared earlier with the breast cancer organization, they're talking, most of their peers are slapping on the pink ribbon or talking about women and their stories. This organization said, what's another angle that would be just as powerful and something that people just don't talk about? But would definitely get attention. So that's what you want to look at. You want to look at your competition first, find out what are they talking about, what are they discussing, what angle are they coming from, and then you want to create contrast with that angle, but also still think about your own supporters and how it's going to come across to them.
Great, thank you. Let's see. The next question that we're seeing is, have you seen any great examples of welcome emails to new subscribers?
Yeah, I've actually seen a number of really great welcome emails. The ones that stand out to me are the ones that are very personalized. So with a welcome email, you want to use as much information about the subscriber as possible in the email. So for example, I work with a lupus organization, and they have in their donor database or in their donor software, someone can actually give money in honor of someone or to support someone, right? Or, basically a mention of someone that they really care about. And so the follow-up email includes that information. Thank you so much for your gift. You just made a big impact in people's lives that are struggling with lupus, like your friend so-and-so, then you simply merge in that field. So the welcome email, that first welcome email, and by the way, don't just send one email. Set up a series of emails, like I discussed, a drip series, where they get an email immediately that says, thank you, look at what you just did. You just made a really great impact. And then also share this with your friends. share this campaign with your friends. That's the first email. The second one can give them an update about that gift, right? Now, when you write these emails, the ones that really stand out to me actually are the ones that are written in second-person narrative, as if they are writing to their favorite donor who's sitting right across the table. They're talking directly to the donor. So the email, the message should be kind of informal. You should write it like you talk. But when you talk, when you're thinking about, well, what am I going to say, bring to mind your favorite supporter, your favorite donor, that person that's really passionate, and start to talk with that person in your mind as you're writing these emails, and that should really be the framework. So second-person narrative, make the message about them, and make sure you include that series as well. So that's usually what I see in terms of the best follow-up emails.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is from the higher ed community, and that is, what is the best higher ed Giving Tuesday campaign that you've seen, and why?
Oh, wow. I can't think of a higher ed community, a Giving Tuesday community. But I have seen a couple of organizations that stand out to me. There's a technical high school, actually, and they reached out to their alumni. And they had a whole campaign where they were asking alumni to share pictures of, like, back in the day. What was your favorite place to hang out on the high school? What are your greatest memories from the school? And really engaging people, the alumni, especially on their turf and what they care about, and having them share pictures. That was one Giving Tuesday campaign that I saw that was pretty powerful. And another one, an alumni program, was really talking about their favorite place in the school. Where did you hang out when you needed a break from all the stress? What was your favorite place to go read? Was it in the library, in the study hall, that sort of thing? So kind of reaching out to people in those ways, that's usually what I've seen that is pretty effective on Giving Tuesday, these short, discrete type of emails that are real, or campaigns that are kind of asking people to share their own experience.
Okay, thank you. I think the last question that we have time for here is there an ideal ratio of fundraising, advocacy, newsletter, or other email outreach per subscriber?
That's a great question. I love that question. So the only issue, though, is that it's not really like a ratio, and here's why. First of all, when you think about it, let's think about each one of these type of emails. We have newsletter, right? That's a consistent type of communication that most people will receive, no problem, okay? And then we have advocacy. Advocacy emails should be really kind of cause-based, in other words, issue-based, or some people like to say issue of the day. If there's like, for example, in the presidential election, there's several organizations that are sending out advocacy emails, stand on the side of love, or, tell, people that we believe in this, that sort of thing. So those are advocacy emails. And that really does depend upon the issue, right? So those are short, discrete campaigns that are issue-focused. That's advocacy. So in other words, there wouldn't be a ratio. There's not a ratio. It's not like, oh, yeah, you should send X number of advocacy emails. No, it depends upon the issue and how important it is. The key with the advocacy email is that the issue has to be important to the community. It can't be something that you think, oh, this is an issue that we think is important. No, it should be something that people are already amped up about, they're already excited about. And then the third part with the fundraising email. Now, there are two types of fundraising emails. One type is actually triggered. They're triggered emails that are based on the advocacy emails. And this is a super powerful strategy. You would need to set this up in your email marketing software. But the way it works is that you send out the advocacy email. You say, hey, take action, sign this petition. This is really something that's, super important. Take action now. So someone goes, a subscriber, let's say a newsletter subscriber, they receive that advocacy email. They take action. Immediately after that, they receive an email that says, thank you for signing this petition. Here's what else you can do. So technically, that's a fundraising email, but that it's a triggered fundraising email. So in terms of this ratio question, in terms of fundraising emails, the most effective ones in terms of conversion are actually the triggered emails, the ones that are triggered in response to another action, like signing a petition or signing a pledge or some other type of precursor, I guess, to financial support. Those are often triggered. So that's and then the second type of email. So those are triggered fundraising emails, and then the other type of fundraising email would be the direct kind of broadcast email that you're sending out to everyone, or, as I said before, different message for different audiences. However, in the month of December, this is where you're going to make most of your revenue in terms of, if we compare all the months together, traditionally most of the revenue, online fundraising revenue, is really in the month of December. So it's really smart to think about, well, let's send, I usually recommend, 5 to 7 emails, broadcast fundraising emails in the month of December. And as I mentioned before, you could send 3 of those during the last 2 days of the month. And of course, that leaves you with 2 or 3 that you can spread out during the month. Always focus on the story first, not, hey, give us money, give us money. Don't emphasize that. Emphasize the impact that they're going to make. It's like an opportunity that you're giving them to make a change that they believe in, right? The other piece of fundraising campaign, especially a short, discrete one like Giving Tuesday or year-end, is you want to make sure that there's a rule in your email marketing software that will eliminate someone from a series of emails as soon as they make a donation, because you don't want to create, say, a series of 3 fundraising emails that go out to a petition signer. Someone signed that petition, and then they're going to receive these 3 emails. You want to set up a rule that basically removes them from that series as soon as they make a donation, because you don't want people receiving more emails. Hey, you can make a donation. Well, I just made a donation yesterday. You want to avoid that at all costs, and the best way to do that is to create a rule that simply removes people once they make a donation. So I hope that helps. That's a little bit more information than you probably wanted, but yeah.
No worries. That's perfect timing since we got started a few minutes late. But for everyone on the call, that is a wrap for today's webinar. And a quick plug for those who are in the market for a prospect research and fundraising solution, we're actually offering a 25% discount for all of the webinar attendees. And I'd encourage you to consider LexisNexis for development professionals, the solution that Ginger demoed that encompasses news, company, and public records data all in one platform. If you'd like to learn more, please indicate your interest in our post-event survey, and we'll put you in touch with one of our reps. We will also provide all attendees with our Millennial ebook following this webinar. So please watch for the follow-up email to receive that. We just want to thanks again to all of our participants for your time and your thoughtful questions. We've hoped that you've gained some valuable tips and strategies that you can apply in your day-to-day. As a reminder, today's session has been recorded, and it will be emailed to everyone on the call if you'd like to revisit at a later time or know of a colleague who may benefit from the recording. I hope you'll join us again for future LexisNexis webinars, and stay tuned for announcements about our upcoming events by following our biz blog, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Have a great afternoon, everyone.